Welcome back. This time we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the sequel to Marvel's surprise hit of 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, with the success streak that Marvel's been on ever since it released Iron Man, it's kind of hard to describe any of their films as a surprise hit. But when it came to Guardians of the Galaxy, this really was the one prior to its release that felt like Marvel was reaching really deep into its cadre of characters to those that only hardcore fans had any clue who they are. The early marketing campaign for that film even played it up, showing how no one knew who these characters were. And instead of being a misstep, it was a huge success among fans, critics, and at the box office, where Guardians of the Galaxy is still the MCU's highest grossing non-sequel, non-Avengers film. As such, there was a lot riding on this sequel, especially since it could not rely on the surprise factor that the original could, and instead had to deliver something that felt true to the first film while also giving us something different. And fortunately, this film does all of that because I thoroughly enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, like the first film, Volume 2 is not perfect, but any quibbles or minor issues I might have with the movie are greatly overshadowed by just the sheer enjoyment that I got out of this movie. It strikes just the right balance between action, comedy, and emotional storytelling. Perhaps the most surprising thing about the movie to me was the fact that somehow it manages to be both funnier than the original in parts, as well as more emotional in others. Now, I went into Volume 2 as blind as I possibly could be. I saw the original trailer when it was released and decided at that point that I was going to not seek out any of the others. Now, I go see a lot of movies, obviously, so typically I get to see most of the trailers whether I want to or not. Somehow, I managed to not see any of the other trailers after the first one, so I went into this movie knowing practically nothing about the story at all, and really enjoyed that fact. So in this review, I'm going to be very scant in the details I give out. Essentially, our crew is back. We have Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt. We have Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana. Drax, played by Dave Bautista, and of course, Rocket the Raccoon, voiced by Bradley Cooper, and Baby Groot, voiced by Vin Diesel. Also returning is Michael Rooker as the Ravager Yondu, as well as co-writer and director James Gunn. New additions to the cast include Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone. As we rejoin the Guardians at the beginning of this film, they're continuing to offer their services to those in need, as long as they can pay well enough. After a particular mission doesn't go quite as planned, they run into a strange alien named Ego, played by Kurt Russell, who may have a personal connection to Star-Lord. And that's really all I want to tell you about the story. Just go and enjoy it. If you like the first film, there's no reason that you're not going to like this one. A lot of the same things are there. Our favorite characters are back, and it's just really funny. There's a lot more humor in this film than in the first one, which is honestly surprising because the first one was quite funny. But just because they're going for those laughs a little more often doesn't mean that the action and the emotion are left behind. As I said earlier, this film actually, in several cases, is more emotional than the first one because there's some personal stories. Our characters have been around each other for a while, so there's certain connections and certain frictions that have been building that kind of blow up during the course of this new story. The acting across the board is very solid. I will give props to Dave Bautista. He seems to have really improved his acting skills since the first movie. Kurt Russell is a little over the top, but it's in keeping with his character. He pretty much pushed it right to the edge. But to me, the real standouts are Chris Pratt and Michael Rooker. They are both phenomenal in this movie. The story asks a lot more of them than they did in the first film, and they both deliver. Now, as I said, this is not a perfect film. I do have a few issues. Some of them are story, some of them are pacing. Really, with the story, there is a couple plot holes or just things where the film, you can tell the film and the writers are basically just asking the audience, just go with us. And as I said earlier, this film is so much fun, and there's just so much just to enjoy the watching it that I went with them. But if you really wanted to nitpick, there are things you could nitpick. The one thing that I really couldn't get over, and like I said, it's not a huge deal, but when they start traveling between planet to planet, there's a new transportation system, how they hop from world to world. Which in itself is fine, but it was never mentioned in the first movie, so it just seems a little disconnected from how that was handled in the original. The other issue is this is a pretty long movie. Definitely stay through the end credits because there's multiple scenes, both tying up some loose threads as well as giving us some hints of what might be coming in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But total, with the end credits, this is about a 2.5-hour movie. And as such, there are a few moments where it does feel like the film's slowing down a little bit. And it has a reason, and that reason makes sense. But it doesn't change the fact that compared to the rest of the movie, there's about a 20-minute section near the middle that is just noticeably slower than the rest of the movie. And it was really about the only time where I kind of just pulled out a little bit and went, this is a long movie. But then, again, the action picks up not too long after that, and then from there on to the end, it's great. And honestly, I mentioned those things to point out that that's basically all I have to complain about this movie. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun experience and a great addition to the overall MCU. I went into Volume 2 with high expectations. Guardians of the Galaxy is one of my favorite MCU films overall. And while I knew this one would not be able to recapture that surprise, I was hoping that it would be able to once again deliver on the style, aesthetic, as well as the characters and quality storytelling that the first movie did. And this one delivers on all of those counts. So like I said earlier, if you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, definitely go see this movie. If you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, go watch that movie because I think you're going to like it, and then go watch this one. If you didn't like Guardians of the Galaxy, well, I don't know what to tell you. You're probably not going to like this one. Now, if you have seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, what did you think about it? What were your favorite moments, and did you have any issues with it? As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.